Everyone, welcome. This is the GTM AI Podcast, episode number 21, where my co-host Jonathan Moss and I dive into prompting strategies and techniques that best help GTM professionals like you. This is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to source for learning how to use AI in companies, teams, and in your individual workflow. Business impact over learning tools.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Coach K, and I have my man Jonathan co-hosting with me today. Hey, buddy, how are you, man?
Living my best life, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. We were just talking before we started, like we were going to put a virtual background up, but then if you're not watching us on video, your Indian friends behind you would be like floating in the air backwards. So
get a
might have to try and see if they come up. Yeah, that's awesome. But this is technically our first time we just get a riff and talk about stuff. So today's we wanted to focus more on prompting frameworks and diving into that work because there's a lot we could cover, and we will as we go on through the podcast. But today is prompting in general and just how do we get better results. So let's first talk about, because I could go on about this for a long time, but when you go onto LinkedIn or into your whatever channel on Slack that you may be a part of, for me anyways, I see a lot of prompts that do one of a few things. Either, and maybe it's because of where we're at in the status, but I see a beginner prompt of like, for enablement, make me an onboarding plan, period. And that's it. And then the advanced or the next level of most people on LinkedIn who are posting how to make prompting are like, make me an onboarding plan that's 30 days long for this particular rep in this area, this industry, whatever, which is much better. But then I'm like, There's another way to do this, which is like more of an advanced, like using, for example, the GRACE framework I've posted about, where you can get a really solid plan and someone who knows what they're doing can get to where they need to go and customize it to whoever you're talking to really quickly so that the output you're getting to is much better. So I'd love to hear from you. Like when you see people talking about prompting, what you see out there, and let's dispel some of the shenanigans going on. How about that?
Yeah. No, I think I see a lot of the similar things you mentioned. And then one of the things is those simple prompts, but in some sort of sequence. So prompt after prompt after prompt, which we was talking about earlier. But yeah, they're very basic. And really what you get, and I think this is one of the challenges that a lot of people are saying, I don't get the results that I need, or maybe I don't know how to use it, et cetera, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, whatever it is that you use. But it's really about that prompt and being very specific, because again, you have where it's you enablement, or I'm doing something with go-to-market or whatever it may be. You're the domain, you have the domain expertise. You've got to act like it's an intern or a new employee and talk to it like, here's or some specialist. If you're hiring a specialist, you're like, hey, I know this, I need your help here. What is and I love your GRACE framework, by the way. So I'm going to go through it. The goal and the role of who are you and what are you doing? What rules are you trying to follow? What do you want them to do? The context. So context is critical here, because ultimately that context is really where your domain expertise comes in, right? I want you, here's the company info, here's the value prop, here's all the things that I want you to know, giving it clear instructions and examples. And I think that's really what's missing to getting the output people are looking for in these prompts in a quick amount of time too, and not taking 10, 15, 20 minutes just to get there. Yeah, I see a lot of the same things that you just mentioned out on LinkedIn or Slack communities, et cetera.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is because this is a new world and people are still learning this stuff. This is something I learned when I first started. I thought it was like, I don't know, make me a poem about a cat in space from LL Cool J style. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think part of the challenge is for years, I feel like our communication has dwindled to where we went from full on writing with hand or typewriter out or like formal English. And then we went to email, then text messaging came up. So instead of YOUARE, like you are, you say the letter U, the letter R. So everything's shortened. We have Google, so you just put in best restaurant in Chicago, whatever. And like our communication has shortened. So a lot of people try to communicate like that to an AI and it doesn't work. Like it forces you to be a really good communicator. And to your point, kind of like an intern, I always tell people, if you want an intern level prompt, then you put in intern level information. If you want an expert level prompt, put in expert level information, because it can pull that, but it's all about how you prompt it. And one of my other friends who's a marketer says, I treat it like I'm a marketing brief. Like I'm looking for a consultant to fill in this thing. I have to be really specific or they're not going to give me what I need because they don't know what I need unless I communicate.
Right.
I think
that's a super interesting point.
Yeah.
That's a super interesting point you made that I hadn't really thought about, but it's so true. And by the way, one of my kids' favorite ones is like creating rap songs or some sort of lyrics for songs about me or about my wife or whomever. So they're really doing that. But back to the point we were making on the shorthand, I think that's super interesting. And I think I think you're right on that because we do a lot of, my kids shorthand the heck out of everything. And it's gotten worse with text messages, even from us. We don't form full sentences or full thoughts or anything.
What's emojis
and I think it's taken us back, and we've got to go back to where we were with writing very long, detailed oriented emails or writing
formatting
on paper,
and headers,
formatting and headers and all that stuff. And I like the marketing brief example. Funny enough, when I'm doing posts or articles or things like that, and I'm having AI helping me write some of those, I'm actually feeding it a marketing brief. And that's how I get really good content, because I'm creating the brief. Here's the ideas, here's the thought, here's all the stuff. I'm feeding it that so it knows what I want. So I think that's a really good point. Think of it as feeding it a marketing brief or something, or a template when you're in your prompt. And I think that's really smart.
Yeah, I posted the other day about this too, and it's something where I thought about this a lot. But if I went to a human, if I went to you, Jonathan, and I said, hey, I know you're really good at go-to-market strategy, and all I told you was give me a go-to-market strategy, and that's all I told you. You as an expert have done this for years and years. Your output would be mediocre because what I gave you was mediocre. It's not because you are not capable of doing something better. It's just you're like, what do you want? Here's my basic thing. So
brother, it'd be worse than mediocre.
Right.
Right. It'd be like, oh, here you go.
But then somehow people get frustrated with AI because all they say is give me a go-to-market strategy. It's mediocre. Like, it just gave me a mediocre thing. Like, what do you think a human would do if you gave it the same response? So if you can't expect it to do any better than a human would do. But if I came to you and I said, okay, I need a go-to-market strategy for an S&B team with an AI tool who goes after CFOs of whatever, blah, 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 in Illinois only with, and this is my budget, this is my stuff, here's where we're going after, all this detail, then you'd be like, okay, now we're talking. Now I can give you something.
That's right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get derailed is you said the stat of like 50% of people who sign up for ChatGPT cancel after the first month or something. That's insane.
It's insane.
But it's because there's no one, ChatGPT, OpenAI, which is amazing. You don't do this, by the way, has no education on here's how you get the best value out of this freaking tool. Like they have the basics, but even the stuff I see from them and OpenAI, please don't kill me or cancel my account. But I don't see a lot of detail on here's how you prompt really well. So
you're 100% right. And I just pulled it up, and it's what you call the blank canvas problem. And Excel has this same thing, right? You open it up, it's a blank Excel, and you're like, the hell, what am I supposed to do with this? Unless I'm an expert or I know what I'm trying to do. I don't know. And they've built some templates, which are okay, but it's funny. Templates are standard. Like you can't use them for what really you need them to use for. So you're lost. And I think ChatGPT's done the same thing, unfortunately, where you open it up, it's a chat, it's blank. And then I'm looking at the 4 prompts, and it's design a fun coding game. That's a terrible prompt. Message to a comfort a friend. Terrible prompt. Like what we just said. And so it doesn't give you good insights on how to create this prompt, a really good prompt. There's nothing really out there. And so I think people are struggling. And that's why you also see probably people on LinkedIn and these Slack communities, as you mentioned, have these short prompts because they don't know any different. And even OpenAI is giving them these short prompts to start. So I think you're right. There's a lot of gaps right now with how to do it effectively.
What's crazy about that is you look at the GPTs from OpenAI, like the data analysis one is freaking killer. I don't know what prompt they have in the background, but that thing is awesome because it gives the context window is super long. So like when it responds to you, it has this amazing logical workflow. Like I look at that and I go, someone knows what they're doing. They're just not sharing what they know what they're doing. So that's the piece I'm like, I wish someone would unveil what's on the back end of some of these things or best practices, because then people would utilize the tool more, which then obviously means more revenue. So I'm like, I don't understand where the gap is happening.
I agree. And even there was in the early days of ChatGPT where we're talking, I think, 3, where you had before it's definitely before 4 came out, you had the plugins, right? The plugin store. And one of the plugin stores was a plugin called Prompt Perfect. And I don't know if you ever used it, but you could give basically a crappy prompt and it would come back with a really good prompt.
Yep.
I have don't have any understanding of why ChatGPT doesn't do that. Where if you give a crappy prompt, it could then come back and say, hey, have you thought about adding these things? Or maybe we just need to create a GPT that does, I don't know, but it's something that needs to help people, because I think that is literally the biggest struggle for people to get the complete value and get the output, get really quality output that they're looking for from the tools.
Yeah, the GTM AI Academy Advisor GPT does that. Like, it's both it does two things. One's about learning how to use AI in your own GTM thing and suggesting tools, but the other side is how in the hello do I make prompts, and uses some prompt frameworks to then say, how do I make a prompt for this? And it'll come out this. I know this, like, AI does an okay job when it's like just guessing of what kind of prompt, but the prompts it's giving is way better than give me an onboarding planner with this thing, or one paragraph prompt. And I know this is we're doing a video thing, so people who are listening to this on audio, can I share with you something? It's
love to see it.
It's an example of this prompt, because I do this for a class, and so I thought this might be a good thing to showcase. And this is for a point, by the way, of how powerful prompting can be. So
by the way, side note, did you know Spotify now has video? Where you can, when you load the podcast.
No, I didn't know that. Video. Totally do that now,
dude. Yeah, cool. It's totally so hopefully Apple will come out with this, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
And then I just go whatever. Yeah, I know.
Just go with what you're gonna do.
Awesome, I love it. I teach a class, and to the point of this is to show the difference between prompts. So first, clarification or disclaimer: I'm a Godzilla nerd unashamedly since I was a kid. So the prompt we're going to use, this is in Midjourney, which is a text to AI or a text to image AI tool. And I wanted to show the difference by visuals, because I think it's a good way to showcase the differences. So here's just me going to Midjourney and saying, give me Godzilla. And the image is like more of a T-Rex with glowing eyes, cool looking, but it's just Godzilla. That's it. Now, the next level is saying, okay, Godzilla with blue fire coming out of your mouth, eyes lit up blue, like movie scene in the middle of smoke, gives you this, which is decent. It's not bad. It looks less than a T-Rex and more like Godzilla, but still not quite there, because as a Godzilla fan, I could say that does not look like Godzilla. But the next level is like understanding, first off, the category of AI we're working with, which is a visual AI. So if I can start to put in things that it would understand, like a Sony FE 24 through 70 millimeter f28 GM, you may know what it means, but the AI does. It's a visual component. And that's what you can do inside of any AI. Once you understand its parameters or what its strengths are, you can lean into it and say, okay, I know visual, or I know ChatGPT knows this framework or coding or whatever. And then you can make the a little bit more advanced. Like, this to me is still a pretty basic, I call it an expert prompt, but it's better than before. And I get this. So it looks like an actual legit, like, good image. So you can see the differences in between each thing. And I use this to show people, like, here's the difference between prompting okay, better, and then advanced is the output you get visually. Is like the best way I can describe it. And this same thing applies to just ChatGPT or go-to-market function or whatever you might be doing, is like saying, how are you prompting? And if you're getting a mediocre result, like a picture, it's not the AI's fault, it's your fault. And I think that's another challenge with AI users, is that humans in general, me included, sometimes self-reflecting and saying that I'm the problem is not the most fun activity in the world. So but you have to be willing to say, maybe I'm the problem here, and I'm not. And that's where the frustration comes in. I want to learn, but I don't know. Even if I am the problem, what do I do to make it better? So
that's right. Yeah. And I love the fact that you did it visually, because I think that's super powerful, because to your point, many people need to see it. And it's hard to see, even if you look at a prompt sometimes, like, even if you were to show a basic, intermediate, and advanced, it may still be like, I still don't understand how to get there and what the outcome is going to be. Because when you show the outcome, it's too long. So I love the fact that you did it in a visual way. That's super powerful.
You'd even done in one of your videos you posted, I don't know if it's still up on YouTube, but you posted a thing where it was one of the first things I saw from you like 6 months ago or something, but you did some sort of go-to-market plan for something where the response was like in head tables and the strategy, and like, it was freaking cool. Like, you had something driving that. That to me is like when you see, not mentioning any names, when you see other people online posting about threaded messages, like prompt 1, do this, then it will respond, and you put in prompt 2 and it does this, and you put prompt 3, like, you did it all in one prompt. So the output was like, it's right here, it's done.
That's right.
So do you use, going more to the positive side versus all the things that we can't stand about prompting, like what mental models, what frameworks, like, what do you do to make sure? Because I'll be honest, every time I do a prompt, I'm not putting in a long framework. Sometimes I'm just like, hey, let's talk about this, and I'll just start prompting because I know how to tweak it. But like, how do you usually like to work on a daily basis? Is it frameworks? Is it some like default thing you put in first and then you go? What do you usually do?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. So sometimes if it's just something new, I'll do what you do, some testing on some different like
Yep.
single threaded or very short prompts. But ultimately, if I'm really thinking about what is the end state that I want to have, like I said, I think your framework is really good. What I try to think about is telling ChatGPT what is the objective clearly. So what is it that I want to do? For example, provide a strategy for increasing online sales by 20% in the next quarter. Right. Now, some people stop there. So that's just the objective. Then I go, what is the context that I want you to understand, or what is it that I want you to do? So you can think about context in this scenario. Maybe we're a mid-size e-commerce business. We are focusing on sustainable home goods, currently experiencing high cart abandonment rates or something like that. So ultimately, I want to give it more context so it knows more about me versus just because if I'm just saying increase online sales, okay, increase online sales on what? Are you selling
Right.
cars? Are you selling home
Right.
goods? Are you selling like what are you selling? I have no idea. So giving it a little bit more context and then discuss what you want the output to be from that and what is the format. So one of the things you mentioned was you saw a certain format. So if you're looking for something, whether it's you want it to provide bullet points, you want it to provide in a tab format or whatever, but ultimately, what is the desired output that you're looking for? So this could be, I'm looking for a bullet point action plan to execute in the next 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is with clear steps for each one of those actions. So that's what is the desired output that I want and the format that I want it to have. And then is there any constraints? So I only have a certain amount of budget or I only have this or that. So what are those type of constraints? And so I think that's me linearly putting it together. Again, what is the objective clearly? Any context that I can provide so it understands more about me and what I'm looking for. What's the desired output that I'm looking for and the format of that output? And is there any constraints or other things that I have that it needs to know? So a lot of that fits actually nicely with inside of the Grace, just a little linear one that I use. And so that's how I usually try to do it. And what I'll actually find, interesting enough, is I'm not an expert either. So I may, after I get the output, I may have, oh man, I want to add this to it. So let me prompt a single line prompt or a short prompt. So then what do I do with that? I take that single prompt and I add it to the other prompt. And so I make one long prompt after a series of questions.
You go back and edit the original one, right?
Exactly. I just go back and edit the original one. Yeah. And then it gives me all the additional context that I need. But yeah. So that's basically my kind of working mental model, if you will, for prompting. So
I think I might do it. And I don't know if we just listeners know we didn't actually plan to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I think it's fun. I'm gonna actually try one of my prompts, which is literally, I'm gonna show you what it is, but it's a competitive research prompt.
Oh, nice.
And so what's your company name again?
Experity.
What's the website? EXPER
ITYhealth.com.
And who's the competitor?
Athena. ATHENA.
HENA.com. Okay, so I'm going to show this. You okay if I do this? Because I just want to show some examples.
Let's roll.
But I hope you can see this okay. This is my GPT desktop app. We can see this okay? See that?
Yep, I got it. See good.
All right, so this is like super easy. This isn't even the Grace framework. It's just saying you are this person. You're a pro at creating battle cards. That's it. I'm representing Experity Health. I want to do a comparison between my company and Athena. Please use the below format as you respond to the output. Access the internet. If you need to research the company the best you can, here's the format as example. And that's it. So I just have this and then an example output, which is in like these, just if you're looking at this visually, these lines, these brackets is how AI understands this to be a head table format. So it's going to respond back in a head table. So all I have is just, here's what I want you to do. Here's what you want an output to be. And then go out and start researching and come back and it should respond. Hopefully this does this correctly. So it's a mess up live in a demo. We should come back and do a SWOT analysis on both your company, and then Athena. There we go. And what it's doing is it should access the internet, either G2 reviews or other stuff, which I wasn't that specific, and I kept it broad on purpose for this example. But me as an enablement person, I've done hundreds of battle cards, so I know what sections I want to have in a battle card so they can talk about how can Experity win, what should I avoid, what's some objections and how do I counter argue those objections? And this prompt is not that complex. It's just me putting in, kind of to your point, I was building battle cards with AI and this would be cool. And I asked it to tell me what I was missing. And I said, you should add this. So I go back into the prompt and add it to the example. And it just starts pumping out all this stuff. So now I'm curious. I don't know how well you know Athena or not, but like you tell me how this right here, how accurate is this? I don't know the companies. So
Yep. Yes. So EMR/PM solutions, yes. So Athena is broadly applicable, which is why we beat them in urgent care specifically because we're specialized to that. Yes. Patient engagement, real-time feedback and text reminders, standard tools. Yes. Because no, it's good. So they don't have their own patient engagement platform. They're more of an open. So they may have a scheduling capability, but they plug into third parties to fill that gap. So that's right. Yes. But just looking at it overall, it's pretty spot on. So it's actually really good. And one thing that's interesting about your prompt, why it may look daunting, the majority of the prompt is actually formatting. And so I want to hit that real quick. It
looks like coding.
It looks super long, but it's just formatting is all that it is.
And really, it's just like this, like outline 5 strategies, unique selling points your company can have an edge, which is how your company can win. So down here, it says, how can it win? There's your 5 things. I didn't even prompt it with what it looks like. I said, just give me the 5. The cool thing about this is that whatever I can use this, copy paste into something and edit whatever I need to do if I need to, but I can always, now I have a battle card versus your company and the other one. I can start chatting with this battle card almost. And I can talk about, okay, what if I have the situation or give me a sample script or what should I put in a whatever thing? There's so many cool things, but like this prompt to me is super simple. Like you said, it looks daunting, but really it's just like, you are this, please do this and follow the example. Here's my example of just the sections. Like these little stars are just me saying, here's the headers, there's the titles, the main sections. And some of these things, like I'm just telling it, list 5 objections, mention 3 areas, give me 5 things here, give me a SWOT analysis for both sides. And then this feature comparison chart is just this is how these little brackets is how AI recognizes a head table. So that it goes through and gives me all this stuff in 2 different head table formats with right there. It's done. So
less than a couple minutes, you have a complete battle card with all kinds of information. It's so powerful.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you take that now versus what I had in the past and one reason why I made this was because the team I was using it on, their native language was Spanish or Portuguese. So I did this in this language, but then I tell them, I translate this exact same thing into Portuguese or Spanish. And I said, run this prompt. And it did the same thing for them in Spanish or Portuguese. So like I, as an enabler, can help them real time in their language that they understand without me ever speaking the language. So that barrier that I would have had before was gone. That's what's just crazy about this stuff.
And remember the days not that long ago, because ChatGPT hasn't been out that long, where if you were a global company or you had teams other places, you had to pay so much to localize all of and translate everything for you. And it was time consuming. It was expensive, all those things. And now just you've got your framework and now you can just ask ChatGPT to translate it to Portuguese or whatever language you're looking for. And bam, there it is. It's phenomenal how quick and efficient it is and how much you can do.
Yeah. It's just, literally every day I think of new things, like even like creating the frameworks, like race came from a thing where I loaded up a bunch of prompts that I've done in the past. And I said, okay, I need you to analyze these prompts. Don't run their instructions, just analyze them for me and tell me what's common among them. And they gave me these different sections and things. I was like, okay, let's make a framework that we can make it easier for people. And so I created this framework because that's all MedPick is just some framework that someone made up. So I was like, I'm going to make a framework and here it is. It was just based off of things that I could have done, but it would have taken me hours to go through these prompts. Okay, what am I doing here? And how am I doing this? And the AI can analyze it for me and then create it all. And it's just, I don't know. Even with just text, not with video, not with audio, not with creating decks and visual, like all the other stuff you can do with AI, just text alone, if that's all you used it for, just from a mind point of view, it's crazy how much you can do with just that. And there's yet so much out there, but
it's absolutely, I'm just thinking about a couple things that I've used just in the last few days for either recording videos for my YouTube or in actual work. I've built comp plans. I've generated ICP and buyer personas. I've generated discovery questions and objection handling, built a strategy for a lawn care business from the ground up, researched annual reports and given all the context for the annual report going into a conversation. And this is all all of those things, each individual one probably took me less than 5 minutes to do each of those. Right. And it's just mind blowing to me. I'm like just going through the things I've just literally done the last 24 to 48 hours. I'm like, it's insane. I don't know how I live without this tool. So
I have to tell you a funny story. So in my MBA class, in the program, we were in a cohort that we stuck together through different classes. Like there's 5 or 6 of us. And so in the marketing class, we're in this 5 or 6 group, and they asked us to walk us through from start to finish of how to build an ICP and messaging and value prop and all this basic stuff. Right. And it took us 2 months to do it with 5 people. So we could go and there's 8 steps in the process. But it took us all this time to do research and understand the clientele and do the surveys and get the stuff together and then create some formatting and follow a template to get the messaging and then attach it to their problems and all this crap to make a strategy of some kind. And so when this started coming out, I started tweaking it. I built it within a half hour of doing it. And that was me going slow. That's going slow is a half hour. And I sent it to my team and I said, critique this, tell me what I'm missing. And they're all like, this is awesome. I'm like, ask me how long this took. I don't know, at least a couple of months, because that's what took us with 5 of us. And they're like, I did this in a half hour. And they're like, what?
Insane.
It's crazy what can happen. And that's why I think the mix of prompting is both understanding limitations or capabilities of the AI itself. So that AI knowledge is important, but it's also the user knowledge, what to tweak. Because like for you posted one time, again, it was a few months ago when you talked about you're looking at your pipeline and you asked the question around, show me the 20% of deals that make whatever most impact, something like that. Yep. That's a question that a leader would know to ask that newbies wouldn't know to ask. And so it gives you this output that is pretty powerful that you as a leader can say, okay, now I can make some decisions around these things because I see the patterns of whatever, So I think it's 100%. that mix. But
yeah, absolutely. And not even just the output. So it gives you the output and then you ask it for recommendations based upon how to solve it and what the impact of those recommendations are. And then it just continues. Because to your point, and I think that's actually good framing. So if I'm, and going back to kind of something we talked about at the very beginning, which around domain expertise, because you have it, is if I'm a sales leader, for example, what questions am I asking of my
AE, what questions do I typically get asked from my sales leader? And use ChatGPT to understand the data, be able to formulate the questions, or even as if I'm an AE, be able to answer and respond to the questions or make sure that I have what I need to prepare. And this is just so powerful for you to do day in and day out. And it also will show you some blind spots because it'll pull up some things that maybe you didn't think about. And that's what I love too, because I'm doing certain things and I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. I'm glad that I put this in here because it's giving me some information that I didn't even think about or I forgot to think about. So yeah, super powerful to use.
Yeah, I'm curious, like when you go through and you start to push your own envelope with AI, like where, and I guess we could probably end with this, is what do you relegate still to your own brain or to someone else's brain that you don't use for AI? What are you saying? I'll use AI up to this point, and at that point, that's okay. Now we hand it off to a human to do whatever. What's that point for you?
Yeah. So right now it's typically at the point we're at, research, building a strategy, pulling together all the talking points, topics, questions, things to ask. So it's really all I would call, if you think about a funnel, it's more up funnel, building everything, putting all that stuff together. Then when it comes down to actually making the decision and then the execution against that decision, that's where it is. Because what I like to do is, there's a saying of lack of data, or if there's lack of data and information, everyone just has opinions. And if everyone just has an opinion, you're going to go with mine. And so what I like to do is say, okay, let me come in with all the research, knowledge, data, et cetera, that I can have from ChatGPT, because sure, it'll take me so long to do it myself. It'll take me so many resources to pull it together. But within 15, 20 minutes, I can get basically everything that I need to go into any topic, any discussion, et cetera. And that's where I hand it off. Okay, so now that we're all working from the same foundation, so now here's all the information, we're working from the same foundation. Now let's make the right decision based upon the research, the data, et cetera. And then let's figure out how we formulate the execution plan. So I'd say that's probably where I hand it off at this point right now.
For me, I look at it more from a creative standpoint because it's really good with strategizing or giving options. But for example, when I'm trying to talk about, like when I'm developing courses for using AI inside of enablement, Like the things I'm creating are literally being created that no one's ever done before. So if I
Oh my
try to use
God.
AI to tell me the outline of things, like the difference for me is I have to put in a lot of content of my own as a foundation to then let the AI be aware of that and then strategize off it. But I'm trying to create that initial foundation first. I can't yet rely on it because it's it's basically predictive analytics of saying, okay, what's the token usage? What's the words that came before? What the words came after? And there's no words that come after in the categories of being created. So it just doesn't know where to go. So that's where I'm finding myself where I'm tapping out with it is even when I push a really creative prompt and it's meant to be creative and innovative and all this other stuff, it still is limited by its knowledge base of what is versus what could be. Does that make sense? And maybe it's
No, it
because I'm just
makes
not finding out how to prompt it. It could be, again, I'm going to look at me. It might probably is me, but I'm still finding I'm just not getting what I need out of it because I have to literally create it like, okay, but when I know what I want to create, like a framework, I go, okay,
Yeah.
now I know what I want to create. I can guide it to help me create it, but the actual creation has to come from my brain. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, no, and I agree completely. And I think going to that conversation about whether it's creating a strategy or whether it's creating content or whatever, the creativity, you can't rely on AI to be, creative. In fact, there's this whole concept that you hear a lot of human in the loop. And I think it's actually wrong. It's not human in the loop, it's AI in the loop because the human has to be the one that's the creative guiding because otherwise you end up, let's go full circle, you end up with a mediocre output because AI doesn't know what you need, what you want. It doesn't know any of that stuff. You actually have to give it that context and information for it to give that to you. So it's not human in the loop because if it's human in the loop, then I'm going to get shitty. So I'm going to get crappy results. If it's not,
you can swear it's okay.
If it's AI in the loop, and the human is driving it, and that's where you get the output, the creativity, such good context and output that you're looking for. And that's where I think going to that point, it's so powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, the real part of creativity is like, for example, last night I was experimenting. I was talking to a sales leader on how to create a unique framework for them on their own sales process because they told me about what they do things. They don't do it like a normal methodology or whatever. And I was like, let's create your own. And then I was thinking, I don't know if I have a framework of how to create a framework. So I created last night a framework to create a framework.
Your framework. Love it.
But it was based on I researched out other frameworks which were not what I was looking for. And so I was like, I got to make this unique. But I researched out using Perplexity, saying, how do you make frameworks for frameworks? And there's some things around more technology frameworks. But I took all the things that I found and then mixed them in ChatGPT and said, okay, my objective is to do this. You leverage these points of frameworks to use frameworks, but we're not trying to create a technology. We're trying to create a skilled knowledge framework. And then I created this framework that now I can literally take anybody's stuff and what comes down to like a sales conversation or a sales leader, I could go to any sales leader and be like, I'm going to make you a custom framework using your knowledge. All I need is this, but I didn't have that before. And it was me who had to come up with, okay, I got to create a framework about this that doesn't exist. There's other frameworks to create frameworks, but they're not with this particular topic, So I think that's the key is using existing models to create something new, but giving the AI a model to model after so it can create something new so it knows some sort of direction. Otherwise, because it's just like shooting in the breeze. I don't know what you want, so I'm just going to give you random stuff and see if it works.
Yeah. And no, I love that. And it gives you the option instead of trying to fit your specific things into an existing framework that's maybe 20 years old, 30 years old, or you may want to tweak it. You can just create it yourself. And I actually see people that have their own sales frameworks or things like that have some sort of boundaries or guidance around it actually work really better because again, they have the domain, you have the domain expertise in a lot of those things. So I love that you've been able to now be able to codify, if you will, how to create your own framework with a framework. So
yeah, that's the world that I find myself in more now is like, how do I scale or understand or use AI to do things that I as myself as a human would take a lot of time to learn to understand. 2 years ago, before all this craziness happened, if you asked me to make a framework of how to make a framework, I'd be like, I have no idea. I get stuck in the, where do I even begin? I'm not an expert in this. But now that I have it, now that I know frameworks just from my enablement side of work, but I don't know enough about how to make a framework, but I can use AI now to understand what do the experts say in the field. So I can use that as my advantage. And I know what a good framework looks at the output, but it's the same concept. It doesn't matter if I need to make a good email, if I need to make a good strategy, it doesn't matter what the output is, as long as you have something to work with and to tweak and make something new with. I think that's where some of the power comes in, which is one reason why I love using examples and prompts, is because at least with ChatGPT, Midjourney is a little different, but like at least with ChatGPT, using examples helps it know and guide it of what in the hell you're trying to get out of it. So yeah, it's crazy. Tell me this, we'll end with this. Whoever's listening, go-to-market leaders, what would be, I'll say, one or two things that you would suggest to include in a prompt to help up-level a game that's more than just a more in-depth paragraph? What would you say?
I would say, to me, probably the biggest, I'll probably say two. So one is, what is all the context that you can provide that you want it to know, right? Because going to your creativity point, or even that, I need to inform ChatGPT what I know. And it's okay if it doesn't even use that information. So the more, it's almost like the over communication, the topic of, I want to over communicate. So over communicate everything that's on your brain, do a brain dump if you want to, but give it that context. And then I think second is, what is the desired outcome that you want from ChatGPT? So don't let it just go on its own and just give you an output you're not looking for. What is it specifically that you want? And your example was great. I want these things, these sections, and in these sections, I want five strategies or whatever it is. And so just whatever that desired output is. So I say context and desired output are really critical in the prompt.
Do you feel like most people get stuck there? I'm going to deep dive a little bit more. I'll wrap this up, but like where do you feel like people don't do enough with that? Like your experience?
Yeah, I think they just either A, don't think about it, or B, they are stuck with what should I give it versus what should I not give it. And so that's why I always say, just get everything. Whatever's on your brain, it will be able to, trust me, it will be able to sort through what it is that is relevant and needed for the output. So don't even worry about the structure. Just throw it in there, right? And so it's so good at that, right? Because it's been trained itself on the entire internet, which is a bunch of unstructured data and things like that. So trust me, Reddit post, right? How more unstructured can you be in Reddit post? So ultimately, don't worry about it. Just, if it's a brain dump, just put everything there, and I think you'll be good.
Yeah, I always tell people what I love to do is, like, when I've taken like a conversation like this, or even if I'm at my desk, and for me, I like to vocally process. So I'll just turn on my phone and I'll just start recording, and I'll upload that sucker, make some sort of sense out of the shenanigans. Because a lot of times, like, it's just unformed thought. And the cool thing about AI is it can give form to the unformed, that you're just like, blah, help me understand what the world I'm talking about. Which is super powerful. My man, this is going to be fun. Next time as we do this, like we said before in the new format, is that we'll still have interviews with different people. But when you and I get together, we want to really dive into either specific issues. And for those listening, if you have a challenge, or if you say, hey, I wonder if I could do this with AI, send it over to us, and we'll try to solve it live and see if we can fix it. Because I really want to try a problem and see if we can do it. And then we'll post it in some of the Slack communities and wherever else, and see if we get some good results. Because we really want to try and see if we can crack the uncrackable with AI that people have had a hard time with. So anyways, if you have that, reach out to us and we'll take a swing at it, see if we can do it.
That's right. We sure will.
That's awesome.
Be fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you, my man. If everyone listening, catch you on the flip side.
See y'all later. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI Podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.